The chandelier over the foyer of Sorrel Ridge estate threw diamonds of light across marble polished, until it looked like still water, and Whitney Sorrel stood beneath it, in a cream blazer, clipboard pressed to her chest. Watching the man in the faded green work shirt drag a garden hose across her open house lawn like he owned the place. "Excuse me," she said, voice pitched for the buyers drifting in behind her. "The grounds crew comes Thursdays. You'll want to move that truck before my clients arrive." The man didn't look up right away. He finished coiling the hose, set it against the fence post exactly where it had always gone, and only then turned to face her. He was somewhere past 50, built like a man who'd spent a life lifting things other people didn't want to lift, silver starting to salt his close-cropped hair. His hands were the hands of someone who worked outside, calloused, sun-marked, steady. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm not grounds crew." "Then you'll need to leave the property," Whitney said, already turning away, already filing him under a category she didn't need to think twice about. "This is a $4.2 million listing, and I have investors walking the grounds in 10 minutes. Have you ever watched a hardworking man get erased by someone who mistook a work shirt for the whole of who he was? In the next few minutes, you're going to watch that same man become the one signature standing between $4 million and a closed deal. Comment where you're watching from, drop a like, and let's rewind. Marcus Bellamy had been coming to this land since before there was a gate at the end of the driveway, before the gravel road got paved, before anyone called it Sorrel Ridge. His grandfather Elias had farmed 41 acres here starting in 1951, back when a black man's name on a deed in this county was treated by the courthouse clerks as something to be double-checked, triple-checked, quietly discouraged. Elias hadn't been discouraged. He'd paid for the land in cash saved up from 3 jobs, cleared it himself, built a 2-room house with his own hands, and raised 6 children who never once went hungry, even in years when the bank wouldn't extend him credit that white farmers got without asking. Marcus's father, Thomas, was the second youngest of those 6 children, and he grew up believing the land was the family's one unshakable thing. He was wrong, though not through any fault of his own. When Elias died without a formal will, a common enough story in black landowning families of that generation, more common than it should have been, the property became what the law called heirs property, split automatically among all his children, and eventually his children's children. No single person owned enough of it to stop a sale. A distant cousin, drowning in his own debts decades later, forced a partition sale through the courts. The land went to auction. A development company bought 2/3 of it for a fraction of its worth. The family kept 9 acres at the back, past a tree line, where the water didn't run as clean. Marcus was 14 when it happened. He remembered his father sitting at the kitchen table with the auction notice, not crying, not shouting, just very quiet, turning a coffee cup in slow circles on the wood. "Land remembers who worked it," his father told him that night. "Don't ever let anybody tell you different, even after they've got the paper that says otherwise." Marcus enlisted in the Army at 18. 2 tour as a combat engineer taught him things that never made it into any recruiting poster. How to read the ground beneath your feet, how patience wins over panic, how the loudest man in the room is rarely the most dangerous one. His sergeant used to tell the younger soldiers that Bellamy was the only man in the unit who could clear a minefield without breaking a sweat, and Marcus never corrected him. Though the truth was simpler, he'd learned as a boy that panic was a luxury his family had never been able to afford. He came home at 26 with a modest savings account, a quiet mind, and an idea he told no one about for the next 30 years. He was going to buy the land back. He met Denise the same year he came home at a church picnic 3 counties over, and told her about the plan on their second date, half expecting her to think it was foolish. 30 acres, a lifetime, no guarantee any of it would come up for sale at all. She didn't think it was foolish. She thought it was the kind of thing worth building a marriage around. For 34 years, she kept a ledger of her own, alongside his, tracking every dollar that went toward the land fund before it went toward anything else, and she never once complained about the modest car, the modest vacations, the modest house 2 towns over, while the family's real wealth sat quietly accumulating in acreage nobody but Renee and a handful of title clerks knew existed. "We're not poor," she used to tell people who assumed otherwise from the outside. We're patient. Not all at once, not with fanfare, parcel by parcel, whenever one came up for sale, whenever a developer's project stalled, whenever an old owner wanted out. He worked landscaping jobs, then ran his own small grounds maintenance company, then invested carefully in a few pieces of commercial property that did well. Every profit went one place. His wife, Denise, a schoolteacher, believed in the plan so completely that she kept the family spending modest for 3 decades, so the buying could continue in silence. By the time Denise passed, 6 years ago, Marcus's family trust, a legal structure his daughter Renee, now a real estate attorney, had built for him, held title or partial interest in 31 of the original 41 acres. The last parcel, the 10 acres that now made up the manicured heart of Sorrel Ridge Estate, was the one piece he hadn't managed to reclaim, but he had done something almost as important. Buried in a 1962 survey, overlooked by every title company that had touched the property since, was an access and water easement, the right-of-way to the property's only natural spring, that had never been properly extinguished when the land was carved up. It legally still ran through what was now called Sorrel Ridge, and it legally still belonged, on paper, to whoever held the original Bellamy homestead deed. That was Marcus. It had been Marcus's family the whole time. Nobody at the fancy real estate office had ever thought to check. He didn't come to the open house to make a point. He came because he still tended the tree line at the back of the property twice a month, an old, informal arrangement with the previous owner that nobody at the new brokerage had bothered to update in their file, and Marcus had never bothered to correct, because he liked the work, liked being near the land his grandfather cleared. Liked the particular quiet of early mornings there before anyone with a clipboard showed up. Whitney Sorrel had been with the brokerage for 4 years and made partner faster than anyone in the office's history. She was good at her job in the ways her job rewarded: fast talking, sharp instincts about which buyers were serious, an ability to make a house sound like a lifestyle. She was also, though she would never have used the word about herself, someone who had built an entire professional persona on knowing at a glance who belonged in a room and who didn't. It had never once cost her a sale. It had, in fact, made her several. Buyers liked feeling like they were being protected from the help. "Sir, I need you off the property," she said again, this time with an edge, because 2 cars were pulling up the drive and she did not want her $4.2 million morning cluttered by a man in work boots. "I don't know how you got past the gate, but I will call someone if I need to." "I have a key to the gate," Marcus said mildly. "Has for 30 years. Whitney laughed, short and disbelieving, already walking backward toward her arriving clients, a hedge fund couple from 3 counties over, the kind of buyers who wrote checks the way other people wrote grocery lists. "That's okay. Sure. Just please stand by your truck." She said it the way you'd speak to someone you didn't expect to understand you fully, and 2 of the other agents trailing her exchanged a small, complicit smile. Marcus stood by his truck. He always did, when a man decided a room wasn't ready for him yet. His father had taught him that a long time ago: dignity isn't loud, and it isn't in a hurry either. For the next 40 minutes, he watched Whitney work the house like a stage. She pointed out the reclaimed heart pine floors, the spring-fed pond visible from the sunroom, the century-old natural water feature that made the property, in her words, truly one of a kind. She didn't know, genuinely didn't know, that the man she'd ordered to stand by his truck was the reason that spring had never run dry in 73 years, because his grandfather had planted the windbreak trees along its bank himself. And because his own trust had been quietly paying for its environmental maintenance easement for a decade. At one point, she came back outside to find him kneeling at the edge of the drive, gently resetting a paver that had come loose. "I told you to wait by your truck," she said, sharper now, aware her clients were watching from the porch. "If you touch anything else on this property, I will call the sheriff." "I've been touching this ground longer than you've been alive, ma'am," Marcus said, without heat, without raising his voice at all. He stood, brushed off his knees, and looked at her, not with anger but with something closer to patience running low. "But I understand. I'll wait." One of the junior agents, A young man named Cole, who'd been with the firm less than a year, drifted over to the truck at one point with a bottle of water. The kind of small kindness people sometimes extend to someone they've already decided doesn't quite belong. "Rough morning, huh?" Cole said, not unkindly, handing the bottle through the window. "Whitney can be a lot, don't take it personal." "I don't," Marcus said, and meant it. He'd stopped taking that particular kind of weather personally a long time ago. It rained on everyone eventually. Some people just got better umbrellas. He thanked the young man for the water and watched him jog back toward the house, and something in the gesture, small, unasked for, unrewarded, settled a little of the morning's static. Not everyone in that house had decided who he was before he opened his mouth. That was worth remembering too later when the story got told. He got in his truck. He didn't leave. He made a call instead. Renee Bellamy picked up on the second ring. She was in her office 40 minutes away, halfway through a deposition prep, and she recognized her father's voice immediately as the voice he used when he was choosing every word with care. "They're closing today," Marcus said. "The hedge fund people. She's walking them through right now." "Then it's time," Renee said. She didn't ask if he was sure. They had been sure for 3 years. What Whitney Sorrel did not know, what none of the 4 agents working that listing had ever bothered to discover in the county archive, was that no sale of Sorrel Ridge estate could legally close without a signed release of the 1962 access and water easement, an easement whose sole living holder was the Bellamy family land trust. Renee had found the recorded document 18 months earlier during an unrelated title search on a neighboring parcel, a discovery that had made her sit very still at her desk for a long moment before she called her father. They had let the brokerage proceed in blissful ignorance for a reason. Marcus wanted to see, one time, whether the land would be sold out from under his family's name again, without anyone at the table even wondering if it had a name attached to it at all. Renee's call to the title company took 11 minutes. The title company's call to the closing attorney took 4. The closing attorney's call to the brokerage's managing partner, a soft-spoken man named Halts, who had built the firm's reputation over 26 careful years, came through just as Whitney Sorrel was walking her clients back into the foyer to sign the letter of intent. "Whitney." Halts's voice when he stepped through the front door himself 20 minutes later had a stiffness to it none of the agents had heard before. "There's a hold on the closing." "A hold? On what grounds?" Whitney's clipboard was still pressed to her chest, her smile still half-assembled for the buyers standing at the counter with a pen in hand. "An unresolved easement, water and access rights, recorded 1962. Halts was reading from his phone now, and something in his face had gone carefully blank the way faces do right before they change entirely. "Title company says the holder of record is a family trust, the Bellamy Family Land Trust." He looked up. "Whitney, is there a Bellamy involved in this listing anywhere?" The silence that followed had a texture to it. Whitney's mind ran back through every showing, every open house, every name on every clipboard, and then, unwillingly, out the window to the man who had spent the entire morning by his truck. "There's a man outside," she said slowly. "Says he's been coming here 30 years. I told him to leave." Halts was already walking toward the door. Marcus was exactly where he'd said he'd be, leaning against his truck, when Halts crossed the lawn with his phone still in his hand, and something like recognition dawning in stages across his face. "Mr. Bellamy." Halts said, "Marcus Bellamy, of the Bellamy Family Land Trust." "That's right," Marcus said. Behind Halts, Whitney had followed as far as the porch steps and stopped there, one hand on the railing, watching her managing partner extend a hand to the man she'd threatened to have arrested for touching a paver stone. The hedge fund buyers stood in the doorway, their pens still uncapped, their letter of intent still unsigned, watching a transaction they had assumed was a formality dissolve in real time into something none of them fully understood yet. "Your trust holds an easement on this property," Halts said. "We can't close without your release." "I know," Marcus said. "My daughter's an attorney, she found it a while back." "You knew, this whole morning you knew, and you let her." Halts didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. He turned slowly and looked at Whitney, and whatever he saw in her face in that moment, the color draining out of it in real time, the clipboard slipping an inch in her grip, told him everything the last hour had actually been. "Mr. Bellamy," Halvorsen said, "I am so sorry. Whatever happened here today on behalf of this firm wasn't your hand that did it," Marcus said evenly. "I'm not here for an apology from you." He looked past Halvorsen to Whitney, standing very still on the porch steps of land her grandfather had never gotten the chance to walk. He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. "You told me to wait by my truck," he said, "so I waited. That's all I ever wanted anybody to see today, that I could wait, and it still wouldn't change whose name was on the paper underneath yours. The consequences move the way consequences do once the story stops being containable." The hedge fund buyers, unsettled by what they'd witnessed and unwilling to be part of a sale now tangled in an easement dispute, walked away from the deal within the week. Halvorsen's firm quietly commissioned an internal review after 2 other clients came forward with complaints about how Whitney had treated contractors and vendors on previous listings, patterns that had always been shrugged off before, because they'd never before collided with $4 million and a recorded deed. She was let go a month later, not with a scandal, but with the particular silence firms use when they'd rather the story end there. Marcus didn't sue anyone. He didn't need to. What he wanted once the dust settled and Renee had negotiated the terms was simpler and in some ways harder to obtain. A permanent recorded conservation easement over the spring, and the tree line his grandfather had planted protected from any future sale, plus a small marker at the edge of the property. Modest stone. Easy to miss unless you were looking for it, that read. Elia's Bellamy homestead established 1951. The new buyers who eventually purchased the estate, once all of this was public record, didn't blink at the condition. If anything, several said it was the reason they wanted the house at all. On the evening the papers were finally signed, Marcus drove out to the tree line alone the way he had 100 times before, and sat on the tailgate of his truck with a thermos of the hot chocolate Denise used to make every October, though it was July, because some habits aren't about the season. His granddaughter, 9 years old and full of questions, had come along, and she sat beside him kicking her sneakers against the bumper. "Grandpa, is it really ours now, all of it?" "Wasn't ever not ours," Marcus said. "Just took a while for the paper to catch up to the truth." She thought about that for a while, watching the last light come down gold and slow through the windbreak trees her great-great-grandfather had planted by hand. "That lady was mean to you," she said finally. "The one who told you to wait by the truck." "She was," Marcus agreed. "But you know what your great-grandfather used to say, land remembers who worked it. Doesn't matter who's standing on it with a clipboard. Doesn't matter how long you have to wait by the truck to prove it. The ground already knows." If this story moved you even a little, you already understand something a lot of people spend their whole careers pretending they don't need to learn. The paper only ever catches up to the truth. It doesn't create it. Somebody somewhere is being told to wait by their own truck on land their family already owns, patiently, quietly, without a single raised voice, because they know exactly what's coming when the record finally gets read out loud. Comment where you're watching this from, drop a like, and let's rewind it one more time.